If you're looking ahead to 2024 for fantasy football, maybe you're already drafting like we are. You want to know who could be the top scorer at each position, the guy who could lead your team to victory. Well, we'll tell you who we think is going to be the top scorer at each position, and we're going to give you some dark horse picks, some players that you might not expect that we think have a good shot to be the top guy. It's not too early to draft for fantasy football season. We're already doing it on Underdog, and if you haven't tried Underdog Fantasy, it's still a good time to do so because the big board and the little board are both up. You can draft a best ball league right now for the 2024 fantasy football season. When you sign up for the first time on Underdog, just make sure you use promo code ENDGAME. That gets you a 100% deposit match up to $100, and you get a free pick'em. That's right, heading up to the Super Bowl. If Pat Mahomes just gets 1 yard in the big game, that gets you a free pick'em. You can combine it with any other pick for any other sport and good chance to win on your entry. Just make sure you sign up using promo code ENDGAME to take advantage of this deal. All right, let's start at the most important position. In real life, it's quarterback. In fantasy, having the right guy can definitely help you win a championship. Now, it wasn't Pat Mahomes last year. He took a little bit of a step back. Who do you think is going to be the top scorer at quarterback for fantasy this coming year, and is it going to be an obvious pick?
I think if there is an obvious pick, it's going to be Josh Allen. He's been the number one QB, I think, 3 times in the last 5 seasons. It's really unbelievable. But if it's not him, I like Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson was a quarterback I was talking up last season as a league winner, and prior to his shoulder injury, he was trending that way. Obviously, we had a lot of football left to be played. We don't know what was going to happen. But you got to like what he brings to the table for fantasy. Because when you look at Josh Allen isn't the number one QB because he throws for 5,000 yards and 40-plus touchdowns every year. He's the number one QB because he throws for a good enough amount of yards and touchdowns, but he runs for a ton of yards and touchdowns. And that's what Anthony Richardson can also do. He's got that tremendous rushing and touchdown upside that gives him the ability to be the number one QB. And again, prior to the injury, he was kind of trending in that direction. So if he can stay healthy for a full 17 this year, I think he's got a good shot.
I love that pick. I'm going to go in a similar direction, but first let me say, it's funny to think that this might not be an obvious pick, but I really think Jalen Hurts will be the number one QB in fantasy. People will just remember him having a down year and so disappointing. The Eagles were disappointing. He still finished as the number 2 QB in all of fantasy in a down season. I think he'll bounce back. But there's another rookie who I think could step up and maybe be the top guy for fantasy. It's CJ Stroud. We all know what CJ Stroud can do. We saw him very impressive as a rookie. Now, I know, unlike these other quarterbacks we've discussed, he's not going to be scoring 10-plus touchdowns with his legs. But I still think he, by volume alone, could throw it enough to be league leader in terms of passing yards, passing touchdowns. And he did run it a little bit. I think they'll actually let him run a little bit more. You'd think, why would they do that? They don't need to do that. Well, if you look at guys like Pat Mahomes this past season, and remember, he's been in the league for several years now, he actually averaged his most attempts per game. He's running more as he goes on with his career. These veteran quarterbacks, once they get a feel for the pocket and pressure and know when to run, they pick their spots. I think they're actually going to let him loose a little bit more. And I think this offensive line will get an upgrade over the offseason. So if there's a dark horse pick for me, it's going to be Stroud. All right, now let's move on to tight end. Things have definitely changed since last year. It's not so obvious anymore that Travis Kelce is the guy. We don't really know where Travis Kelce stands. So who is the guy this coming year?
I think Sam Laporta has to be the guy, but he's pretty much the consensus number one. So if it's not going to be Sam Laporta, I'm going to put my money on Mark Andrews bouncing back and being the number one tight end this year. He was also having a great season last year before that high ankle sprain from that hip drop tackle late in the season. They need Mark Andrews. This offense, this passing offense was what we expected, much better last year. I think that continues into next year. Plus, it's going to help with Zay Flowers taking some pressure off Mark Andrews. I think we see Mark Andrews bounce back in a big way and be the top scoring tight end.
Well, I think Laporta has to be the one we consider the consensus tight end one because he somehow wound up as the number one tight end in his rookie season. So yeah, I like him. But look, here's a sleeper for you. We're going deep but plausible. Why not Kyle Pitts? Look, think about this. Last year, we know that he wasn't 100% entering the season, but we found out after the year was over that despite playing all 17 games, he had issues with his MCL and his PCL. He was never really right. And maybe that's part of the reason why just there was some discombobulation in terms of some of the routes he ran and just not being that effective. And then there's the fact that he had either Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke at quarterback. It's not going to be the same situation next year. I don't know who their quarterback's going to be, but I guarantee it will be an upgrade somehow. Maybe they'll get one of these rookies. Maybe they'll get a veteran. It's going to be better. So upgrade at quarterback, healthier, and I think most importantly, no Arthur Smith. We can all celebrate that. The offense will definitely focus on its skilled players more, meaning the ones that actually should be getting the ball. So maybe this is finally the year Kyle Pitts breaks out. All right, now here's the real glamour position, wide receiver. This actually might be a little tougher than you think because there's so many choices. Who do you think is going to be the number one wide receiver next year?
Well, last year I said I thought Tyreek Hill was going to break fantasy football, and for almost the entire year he did, until he kind of slowed down at the end. I still think he's going to break fantasy football this year. I think we could see him actually make a run at the 2K yards. But if it's not going to be Tyreek Hill, I really like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Last year I was also saying that if it wasn't one of the kind of big 3 or 4 wide receivers, it was going to be CeeDee Lamb as the number one wide receiver, and he was. Now I'm saying the same thing about Amon-Ra St. Brown, and these guys feel very similar, kind of pigeonholed into these slot receiver kind of roles, even though they can do more. He's entering year 4 like CeeDee Lamb. He's gotten better in every single category, every single year of his career. I think we could see Amon-Ra St. Brown have a type of leap that CeeDee Lamb had last year, this year, and be the number one scoring wide receiver.
Well, my obvious pick here is going to be one that is kind of a repeat. It's Justin Jefferson. Look, honestly, the only reason I think he wasn't the number one receiver last year was because of that injury. Because when he was on the field, he was still amazing. And I know people are going to say, well, what if Kirk Cousins isn't there? Come on. When he came back, did you see the numbers he put up with Nick Mullins at quarterback? Do you really think it matters who's back there? It will be someone who's capable of putting the ball in the general vicinity of Justin Jefferson. But here's a sleeper for you. And I'm not just, going on a limb here. It is possible that Marvin Harrison Jr. in his rookie season basically breaks the NFL. Not just because he's been labeled a generational prospect, because we've seen that label slapped on some players and it just doesn't pan out, like a Kyle Pitts, let's say. But this is not only a receiver who has everything that you could possibly think of. If you were building a receiver like in a lab and you created the prototype, it's him. But also, he's going to probably land in the perfect spot, and that is Arizona. Now, we don't know for sure, but this is pretty much where every mock draft has him going. Just think about this. He's going to go to a team that already has an established and a good quarterback to throw to, and he's really not going to have that much competition for targets, and this is a team that will throw the ball enough. Marvin Harrison Jr. could have a season kind of like Jamar Chase. Remember when he was a rookie and he almost finished as number one receiver in fantasy, except for the fact that Cooper Kupp just went insane that year. Why can't Marvin Harrison put up those kind of numbers, but better? I think he can, and so he's my dark horse, if he's even that, to be the top receiver. All right, we've been saving running back for you. Everybody wants to know who's going to be this year's RB1.
Well, if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy, Christian McCaffrey will more than likely be the RB1. Although I will say, I think he's got some competition this year. I think one of those guys could be Jahmyr Gibbs of the Lions. Look, one of the things I was worried about with Jahmyr Gibbs going into the NFL draft, and even when he got drafted by the Lions, was, is he going to get goal line work and is he going to get enough carries? Well, we saw down the stretch and in the NFL playoffs, he got both of those, plenty of them. He got tons of goal line run. In fact, it almost seemed like Dan Campbell started to trust Jahmyr Gibbs more than David Montgomery. I think that goes up even more in year 2. I think we could see him have kind of like an Alvin Kamara season that we saw where, no, he doesn't put up prolific rushing numbers. Maybe he only rushes for 800, 900 yards, but he catches 60, 70, 80 passes and gives you 15-ish touchdowns in this offense, and that is more than enough to be the top scoring running back.
Well, the top scoring running back is probably going to be Christian McCaffrey. I mean, if I had to put money on it, yeah, it's going on CMC because there's no reason it wouldn't. I should also mention, since the Super Bowl is just days away, If you are on Underdog, you can check out all the pick'ems for CMC right now. In fact, I'm so confident that he's still the top running back in the game. Right now, his pick for total yards is 128.5. I think can a running back these days in the big game put up those kind of numbers? Yeah, if it's Christian McCaffrey, he can. I would go higher than that on him. But in terms of a sleeper at running back, somebody who could dethrone CMC, I'm going to go with Breece Hall. Look, what we saw toward the end of last season was Breece Hall was doing basically all the things that we had hoped and thought that Bijan Robinson would be doing. Well, Breece Hall is not only a great runner, but he caught so many passes. I think he showed the Jets that they don't really even need an effective wide receiver 2 or 3, which they didn't really have all of last season, because Breece Hall catches so many passes and he's so good with the ball in his hands once he gets it. And just think, with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback next year, this whole offense will be better. They'll maybe actually be playing from ahead sometimes, and that means they can establish the run more. Breece Hall can be even more of a focal point of that offense. We know the talent is there. He'll be fully removed a year plus from that terrible injury. He will be good to go. He will break out completely next year. I have confidence. Will he pass CMC? I think it's possible. All right, so final call here. Push comes to shove. Who do you think is the top overall fantasy score? Look, we had a surprise this year. Nobody necessarily expected CeeDee Lamb to take over at receiver. Who do you think does it in 2024?
Well, I'm going to go back to the well with Tyreek Hill. I think he does it. I think he does make a serious run at the 2K yards, stays healthy all year, and does it. But we've been doing it the whole video, so let's keep it going. If it's not Tyreek Hill, I'm going to say Amon-Ra St. Brown, just like you said with CeeDee Lamb. If Amon-Ra St. Brown makes that CeeDee Lamb kind of leap, which I think he will do, he has a legitimate shot in your PPR leagues to be the highest scoring player in all of fantasy.
Well, if I'm going with the top overall scorer, it's still going to be a receiver. I'm going to stick with my guy, and that's Justin Jefferson. If he stays on the field, I really don't see anybody stopping him or slowing him down. But if it's not, or what if it's a crazy year and a running back is the top scorer, I really think it's Breece Hall. Honestly, I wish I could say it's Bijan because Arthur Smith is gone and he finally breaks out. I just don't know, though. I think Breece Hall has shown he's going to take over that entire backfield, get so many touches, and he's just so explosive. So he's my dark horse. Those are our projections for the top scorers at every position. What about projecting the beginning of fantasy drafts for next year? We already did that, so check it out here.